In March 2026, Craig Gordon sat in a consulting room in London and heard a sentence that most people would have treated as the end. He had traveled from Edinburgh to see a spine specialist named Usama Janoun about the slipped disc in his neck, the one that had been pinching a nerve, sending weakness down his arm, threatening to end a career that had already been ended and restarted more times than he could cleanly count. Janoun did not soften what he had to say. He told Gordon what the surgery required to fix the disc involved. He pointed to the information leaflet, and then he said it directly. You could get paralysis. You could die. Craig Gordon went ahead with the surgery. 3 months later, he stood in a tunnel at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, in a Scotland shirt, waiting to walk out for his country's first World Cup match in 28 years. The oldest player at the 2026 tournament. The oldest player in any squad across all 48 nations. 43 years old. A new baby at home. 8 weeks old when the tournament began. A neck that a surgeon had opened up and repaired with the full understanding that the procedure could kill him. And he walked out anyway. To understand what that walk means, you have to go back to the beginning. Not 2026. The beginning. Craig Gordon made his senior Scotland debut in 2004. He was 21 years old. Aaron Hickey, one of his current teammates in this Scotland squad, was 1 year old. Ben Gannon-Doak, who has been one of the Tartan Army's breakout performers at this tournament, was not yet born. In 2007, Sunderland paid £9 million to bring Gordon to the Premier League, the most expensive British goalkeeper in history at that point. The future appeared to be a straight line upward. Then the injuries started. Ankle problems, broken arm, broken leg, multiple knee surgeries, neck and shoulder issues that recurred across years, then decades. An estimated 1,975 days of football lost to injury. Roughly 200 games gone. In 2012, patellar tendinitis kept him out for 2 full years. His club at the time, Sunderland, questioned whether the pain was psychological. He sought help from specialists across Europe. He underwent 3 surgeries. He saw a psychologist. A surgeon told him to retire. He did not retire. He joined Celtic in 2014. He won 5 Scottish League titles. He came back to Hearts. He rebuilt himself again. He became Scotland's first-choice goalkeeper again. And in June 2024, he became Scotland's oldest ever international footballer. A record that had stood for decades, until the man who refused to stop playing broke it by still being there. He said something in a BBC Scotland documentary that captures the full weight of what 2 decades of this looks like from the inside. He said there are definitely times where he has cried because of injury. He just probably doesn't show it to everybody else. 22 years of not showing it, of absorbing it in private, then walking back out. Then came November 2025. Scotland needed a result against Denmark at Hampden Park to qualify for the World Cup for the first time since 1998. 28 years. A generation of Scottish fans who had grown up watching every other nation compete on the biggest stage, while their country found new and painful ways to fall short. Gordon was in the squad. He had barely played for Hearts all season. A shoulder injury had limited him to 3 club appearances across the entire year. But he was there. And when Scotland won 4-2 that night, Scott McTominay scoring the goal that will be remembered for decades, Kieran Tierney adding a late second that confirmed it, Gordon was in the goal. He said afterward that he was emotional, that he cried in his room about it, about how much it meant to everybody. He described what he did in goal that night as walking back to his 6-yard box after each Scotland goal and getting ready for the restart. No celebration, not even a visible reaction. Because any break in concentration at that moment could have cost them everything. And Craig Gordon has learned across 22 years of international football that the moment you let the emotion take you is the moment the game takes it back. He also said something else. He said that without the World Cup on the horizon, he probably would have called it quits at the end of the previous season. The World Cup was the reason he went into Usama Janoun's consulting room in London. The World Cup was the reason he heard the words, "You could get paralysis, you could die," and said yes to the surgery anyway. The World Cup was the reason he was in Foxborough, Massachusetts, on the 13th of June 2026, 43 years old, waiting in the tunnel. And then he played. Scotland versus Haiti, the opening match of their group. Their first World Cup game since they were beaten 3-0 by Morocco in 1998. A result that eliminated them from a tournament they had waited years to reach, just as they had waited years to reach this one. Gordon started. He wore number 21, not the traditional number 1 he had carried for most of his career, but the shirt his manager gave him in a squad where Angus Gunn holds the first-choice jersey. He played the entire first half against Haiti. He kept a clean sheet. John McGinn scored in the 28th minute, a deflected rebound that somehow summed up everything Scotland football has always been: artless and unstoppable, all at once. Scotland won 1-0, their first World Cup victory since 1990. 36 years. The Tartan Army, thousands of them who had crossed the Atlantic for this moment, singing Flower of Scotland in a stadium in New England at 2 in the morning UK time. Gordon stood in his goal and watched it happen. He did not show what he was feeling. He never does. He walked back to his 6-yard box and got ready. Here is what the full shape of this looks like. A goalkeeper who turned pro as a teenager, who was told at least once by a medical professional to stop playing, who lost nearly 2,000 days to injury across a 22-year international career, who had a disc in his neck repaired in March with the understanding that the surgery could leave him paralyzed or dead, who flew to America with an 8-week-old child at home. That man is the oldest player at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. He is not here because the pathway was clear. He is here because every time the pathway was closed, he found another way through. And because he carried one dream through all of it, the dream that Scotland would get back to the World Cup while he was still the person standing between the posts. Scotland still have Brazil to play on the 24th of June in Miami. They need a result to be certain of advancing. The group is not finished, and neither is Gordon's tournament. He told reporters something before it all began that captures this better than anything else could. He said he thinks he'd have probably called it quits, but this is one last effort, one last goal, and it's come off. Not everyone who hears the words "you could die" chooses to go ahead anyway. Craig Gordon did. And he is standing in a World Cup tunnel at 43. A place he waited a career to reach, because that choice is exactly the kind that defines a person. If you follow football for the stories that remind you why the game matters beyond the results, subscribe and tell me in the comments, is Craig Gordon's journey the most remarkable story of this entire World Cup? I read everything.